Hi guys. So today I want to talk about navigating through the dark night of the soul. It's been on my mind lately because I've been thinking of cutting some things out of my life that are still kind of attached to my old story, and it's just I feel a little bit held back and like I'm ready to expand more now, and there's some things that are kind of attached to my old identity which has been changing a lot because I've gone through a 10-year dark night of the soul. But I'm coming through that, which is really great. So I actually wanted to talk about 3 key points of navigating through the dark night of the soul, and things that were really beneficial for me when over the last several years, more so in the last 2, because I think my dark night started off with a little bit of a I had some spirituality, but I kept repeating old behaviors over and over and over again because I was still holding on to that person I was when I was really young, and that will just, and all these densities going through the dark night of the soul, these things will keep resurfacing and presenting themselves in your life in different ways, one way or another, until you can heal certain things, and it does just keep coming up, and then it's pretty easy to kind of repeat this same old crap that you're trying to let go of. So work on it as soon as possible so you don't have a 10-year dark night of the soul like I did. But so the first point I want to talk about is identity. Basically, that thought process of who am I? What's this all about? It's kind of the first things that start to come up with the dark night of the soul. Just kind of things are no longer in this regular flowing state of hanging out with your friends and going to work and not kind of questioning all these things and not feeling like you're out of place. It starts to feel a little out of place, so it's like, what's going on here? So when it comes to identity, it's time to start taking a look at yourself. So the first thing with that is triggers, mirrors, and traumas. So basically, if you're being triggered by other people and things are upsetting you, something's really bothering you, then more than likely it has something to do with some wound from childhood or some wound throughout your life, something that you're supposed to look at, or it interferes with your core values and things that are really important to your being. So it's good to kind of recognize what your core values are and what things are triggering you based on what traumas and where that might be coming from. So, and with that, I recommend doing shadow work, parts work, and some inner child care. With shadow work, it's kind of shining a light on those deep, dark places that we don't see. And it oftentimes can be things that you haven't thought about, or even things that you don't remember. So really digging into that, and there's lots of material on doing shadow work, and I'm going to do a video on shadow work here pretty soon too. And I'll probably incorporate parts work and inner child work as well, because your inner child is one of your parts. Probably the most valuable one, because eventually we don't really need all those parts. We don't really need certain protector parts that come out when you're triggered and things like that, like those defense mechanisms that come from just the rough experiences through life, so that we start to learn certain behaviors and develop these different parts to protect ourselves. And I also do recommend really doing some work on letting go of resentments. Holding on to anything involved with any sort of pain, if you old loved ones, parents, and it's not about them, it's about letting go for you. It is allowing yourself to be free again, free of that bondage. And that's mostly what the Dark Night of the Soul is all about, is realizing that you've got all these things kind of attached, all these bondages, this confinement, traumas, triggers, all these things that you've kind of packed on and have identified with them somehow. They've become a part of your identity. It's all about shedding all of that crap. So, I do recommend doing that kind of work, shadow work, releasing resentments, looking at what triggers you, and not really identifying with any of it. They're just kind of things that have been imprinted on your life over time, like a computer, and you just have to defrag your computer, kind of wipe the slate clean a little bit. So the second point that I want to talk about is be a river. So that's kind of always trusting your intuition, your heart, and your gut, and having trust in the universe, trust in yourself, very important, and trust that you're going to be guided to where you need to go, and that everything is going to be okay, because really we're always okay, right? I mean, worrying about things hasn't really done much good, does it? And of course, with being a river, it's just letting go, letting yourself float, right? Not fighting the current, which is exhausting and awful, but letting yourself float along with the river of life, and being very accepting of what is and how things go, and being okay with all of that. Releasing that fight a little bit just really makes things a lot easier, especially going through a dark night of the soul, because there's this pull, to hold on to these old behaviors, and then there's this pull to your inner truth, and so there is that struggle there, right? But just letting go and having some trust, faith, and just being very fluid is I highly recommend that. The third thing I wanted to talk about is loneliness when it comes to the dark night of the soul. So going through this process of the dark night of the soul, chances are you have a lot of people in your life that still kind of resonate with the old version of you, and friends, family, co-workers, and it's hard to express what you're feeling and what you're going through, because chances are they're not going through the same thing at the same time. We all have our own paths, right? So things can start to feel a little lonely, even in a crowded room. So at this time, that's when it's really, really important to establish that relationship with the self, with the inner child, self-love. And to do that, I highly recommend, I always say this, meditation is key. Once you start kind of tapping into your higher self and communicating with your higher self, with source, there is a point that you reach that it doesn't feel as lonely anymore, because you kind of start to tap into something much more expansive, and there's a lot more there. It doesn't feel as kind of trapped and scary and lonely. So I do recommend really tapping into yourself and doing meditation, and doing a version of prayer at this time is also really good, even though you're you're communicating with yourself, you're communicating with source. It's an energy, right, that you're putting out. That also helps with the loneliness. So I also recommend watching my video, Empath's 3 Tips to Achieve Inner Alignment and Positive Thinking. That goes into ways of kind of reconditioning the mind to think, to look at life in a more beautiful way. And that's a good start when things start to look kind of murky, when you start to realize that you're in this dense energy of self, and and you're ready to release that old version of yourself. So that's all I have for today, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.